Alright, welcome to 8.2. We're going to do numbers 9 and 11 because numbers 9 through 16 are all kind of the same thing. But I'm going to do 9 and 11 at the same time because I can. So now let's start with number 9. And we are asked to find a formula for the trigonometric function. So first, let's see what we can let's just see what we can figure out by looking at this graph. We see that it maxes at 4 and it troughs at -4. So our maximum is going to be at 4 and our minimum is going to be at -4 for the y values, or they're not going to go past that. So we know that if we take 4 plus the absolute value of -4 equals 8, divide that by 2, and it gives us our amplitude. So our amplitude is going to be equal to 4 units. Alright? Cool. So next, let's take a look at the midline. And we know that our amplitude is 4, and so if we start at 4 and go down, we hit 0. If we start at -4 and go up 4, we hit 0. And 0 is obviously just the middle of this. It doesn't take a lot of explaining. I'm really bad at explaining the midline, but we do know that y equals 0 is our midline. And we can find the period too. This graph is sectioned out in increments of 4s of 1. So we have 1/4 or 0.25. And so we know this is 0.5. This is 0.25, -0.25, both of these are negative. This is 0, this is 0.25, this is 0.5. So, how long does it take for this function, for this function to make one complete cycle? Well, let's see. It takes 1/4, it takes 1/2, it takes 3/4, it takes 1. So our period is equal to 1. But that doesn't really tell us much. We don't want the period. We can't really do much with that in our formula. So we need to find b. But we do know we can find b using the period. So the period is not entirely unhelpful. But we do know that the period is equal to 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b. And now we can just plug in numbers. We know that t equals 1, t equals 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b. So 1 is an easy number to work with, and we find that b equals 2 pi. Right? So we have a, we have our midline, and we have b. So now we can actually do something and write this formula. So h of t, because that's what it's labeled in the homework question, is equal to, now we need to decide. Ooh, my phone started slipping off because I shook the desk. Anyway, now we need to decide, do we want to use sine or cosine? Well, I'm going to give you 5 seconds to figure that out, because you shouldn't need more than 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Time's up. We're going to use a sine, because this is exactly what sine looks like. It's just that it's been stretched and compressed a little bit vertically and horizontally. So this is actually a really nice graph for us to just start with right here. So h of t is equal to, our amplitude is 4, and our amplitude will be our a value because it will stretch it, this 1 that sine and cosines are naturally, up to 4 on both sides respectively. So a will be equal to 4, so ht equals 4, because that's our vertical stretch, sine of 2 pi x And that would be how we get this formula. And if I check the answers, I see that that is what the back of the book has listed. And so this would be our formula for h of t. All right, so now let's move on to number 11. This one seems a little harder. Let me bolden these a bit because I can hardly see them when I look into my camera. I'm sorry guys, I don't have the best handwriting in the world. Okay, so let's take a look at this. We see that off the bat, these waves, we can find their amplitude. It's a good place to start. And their amplitude is, let's see, 1, 2. This gives us actually a point on the graph, which is actually very helpful, because without this point, we really couldn't be able to find anything out. I can sit here and count these all day. But you'd probably ask, well, how do you know that that many squares equals 2 units? Well, it's because this point here, 3 pi, comma 2, gives us the distance up from the x-axis to this line. And if we look, we can tell that this line is the midline. It is evenly cutting out, evenly intersecting this graph to where this function is oscillating around it. So we can tell fairly easily that go up 2 and there's my midline. So we know that the amplitude is 2. But that also tells us another thing. Our midline if you go up 2, this point is on the midline. So not only is our amplitude 2, but so is our midline. It's at y equals 2. And our period. So our period, let's see how long it takes for this to go through one complete cycle. So we start at negative pi. Move over pi units. So that's 1 pi. Move over another pi units. That's 2 pi. Move over another pi unit. That's 3 pi. Move over another, and that's 4 pi. So our period is equal to 4 pi. Now, like I said earlier, period, we don't have anything for period in our formula. We don't have a place for that. So what we need to find is b. What does b equal to make this period equal 4 pi? So t, remember, t equals 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b. We have t, so t is now useful. 4 pi equals 2 pi divided by the absolute value of b. So we get b equals, or I skipped a step and I'm trying to do this step by step. We have 4 pi b equals 2 pi. Then go ahead and divide both sides by 4 pi to isolate b. b equals 2 pi divided by 4 pi. And that equals 1/2. Pi's cancel, 2 divided by 4 is 1/2. So b equals 1/2. And, I'll flip this up just so you can see. There, I wrote it. Cool. Just believe me, it's there. So now we have enough information for us to write our formula. So we have g of t is equal to, well, our amplitude is 2, so we're doing a vertical stretch by 2 units. Our amplitude is 2. Now ask yourself, ooh, I shook the table again. Ask yourself, do we want to use sine or cosine? I'll still give you 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. We're going to use cosine because this is essentially a cosine that has been reflected across the x-axis and has been shifted up, right? It's been reflected across the x-axis, stretched by 2, so that when x equals 0, y equals -2, and then shifted up 2 units, so that when x equals 0, so does y. So 2 cosine, -2 cosine of, well, what is our b value? B is 1/2, so 1/2 t. I just realized I made a mistake in my other formula. I used x inside of the sign when I was supposed to use t. So -2 cosine 1/2 t plus 2. And that should be our formula. Now let me check this with our answers from the back of the book. And it says g of t is equal to -2 cosine t divided by 2 plus 2. The only difference between what I did and what they did is they went ahead and combined this 1/2 in t and made this t divided by 2. Right? So, you know, I like to have my values separated out so I can just look at my equation and know what I'm working with. But this is the answer. So I will see you in the next video.